The Junkers Ju88 bombers were among the most versatile and longest-serving aircraft of the Second World War, and can be counted among the very few that weren't completely obsolete at the end of hostilities. A modern design in the days preceding the war, it was intended to become the primary medium bomber in Luftwaffe service, before its planned replacement by the more modern Ju288 the years to follow. When its successors failed, Junkers were forced to return to the Ju88, producing new and improved models to stave off obsolescence and fill new specialised roles. Among the last of these variants was the Ju88S, which sought to produce the fastest bomber variant of the aircraft possible. By the end of 1942, the German war effort spanned several major fronts, and the Ju88 was used extensively on all of them. By then, even its latest variant, the Ju88A4, was growing obsolescent. With no replacement on the horizon, the decision was made to once again look into improving the performance of the venerable Ju88. With the wings already having been previously modified, further performance improvements were to come through streamlining and new engines. In 1942, a proposal for a major redesign featuring a completely new canopy was rejected due to the production delays such changes would entail. However, the effort to improve its power plants encountered fewer obstacles, and the BMW 801 was soon set to replace the aging Jumo 211 on the future Ju88 models. The BMW 801 promised a power increase of over 300 PS per engine, and beyond that it featured a highly advanced engine control system that meant the pilot only needed to adjust the throttle, and the system would adjust the RPM, boost and mixture as needed. Its only major drawback was its relatively dated single-stage supercharger. Regardless, it represented the way forward for the Ju88, and several new variants were drafted using this engine. Further development would see the removal of the gondola under the aircraft's nose, which carried a defensive gunner's position, with this massive reduction in drag also making its way into the next series of Ju88s. These new models would be the Ju88G, a night fighter, the Ju88T, a reconnaissance aircraft, and the Ju88S, a high-speed level bomber and pathfinding aircraft. Apart from a few pieces of specialised equipment and the larger vertical stabiliser on the Ju88G, these aircraft shared most of their components with their predecessors, and the technical differences between them were so minor that they utilised the same basic flight manuals. This would prove to be a vital advantage of the new designs, as during this period, Inspector General Erhard Milch was attempting to rationalise all aircraft production into as few airframes as possible, in order to increase overall production and to streamline maintenance services. As part of this scheme, the Ju88 would prove essential, with its single airframe being capable of fulfilling multiple essential roles in the Luftwaffe. The new Ju88S featured a streamlined nose and BMW 801D engines. Compared to the Ju88A4, its top speed was increased from 470 km an hour to 588 km an hour, and its high cruising speed was nearly the top-level speed of the older model. At high altitudes, performance could be improved even further using the GM1 nitrous boost system. The system was simple. It used the nitrous as an oxygen carrier to increase the oxygen content of air entering the manifold at altitudes where the supercharger's effectiveness fell off, and recovered power otherwise lost to the thinner air. Utilising this system at the height of 8 km, the Ju88S could reach a top speed of 610 km an hour. The later models of the plane would switch to the more reliable Jumo 213A engine, which delivered near identical performance with a similar engine control system. The Ju88S retained the good flying characteristics the series was known for. It featured well-harmonised, responsive controls that remained light at higher speeds. The use of the highly automated BMW 801 and Jumo 213 engines also reduced the pilot's workload, who only needed to adjust the throttle to bring the aircraft to the desired speed. Combined with its autopilot, the Ju-88S was an aircraft many Luftwaffe crews felt confident in flying hands-off for extended periods of time. This would prove essential considering the mostly nocturnal sorties this aircraft flew, where pilots needed to pay close attention to the instruments and the various navigational signals guiding them to their target. The first of these planes was the prototype Ju-88V-56, which paved the way for a limited production run of 24 planes, delivered by June 1943. The initial recipients of the Ju-88S were the specialised pathfinding, the first grouper of Kampfgruppe 66, tasked with guiding bomber formations to their targets under the cover of night. The unit began receiving the aircraft in May 1943, while operating out of Chartres, France. During this time, they conducted small-scale raids and reconnaissance missions over southern England. The first loss of the type happened soon after, when on the 30th of the same month, a Mosquito night fighter intercepted and shot down one Ju-88S at an altitude of 9 kilometres. It wasn't until 1944 that the unit was called to act as a pathfinder force, during the revenge-motivated Operation Steinbach, or Baby Blitz, as it later came to be known. While the Allies continued their airborne assault, Hitler wished to launch a reprisal operation against the British people, and Reichsmarshal Göring believed it was an opportunity to show the lethality of his air force, which had several new designs at its disposal. In contrast to the highest echelons of leadership, Colonel Dietrich Peltz, who was to direct the operation, wished to make use of the bombers against Allied shipping in the hope of complicating any Allied invasion of France. The first grouper of KG-66, with its 42 bombers, was effectively the tip of the spear of the force which peaked at 524 planes. A mix of bombers, Me-410s, Zerstörers, and FW-190 fighter bombers. The general level of night-flying proficiency among the raiders was poor, and thus the pathfinders were essential in leading the raiding force to their targets. The attack was to mirror the tactics of RAF's Bomber Command, with light specialised pathfinders plotting a route for heavy bombers carrying the heaviest types of bombs available, intermixed with smaller incendiaries and fragmentation bombs on timers set to explode well after the raid ended. The assault against London began on the night of January 21st, and it immediately became apparent that the guidance systems were struggling in the face of British electronic warfare. The accuracy on the first night was thus extremely poor, with only about 30 tons of explosives of the 500 dropped landing on the capital. However, the Luftwaffe committed to the offensive and launched another attack at the end of the month, and they returned to London 7 more times in February, when the pathfinders had shown serious improvement. In March, they shifted their attention to Hull and Bristol, but London remained a primary target. Attacked 5 more times in March before the last major raid on the city in mid-April. The Germans had little to show for their attacks, as while they had done a great deal of damage to the city, the worst since the Blitz, they found the Londoners as immovable as they had been during the Blitz. For their efforts, the Luftwaffe had largely expended their bomber forces, with Luftflotte 3's Fliegerkorps 9 on the German side of the Channel now being left with 130 serviceable bombers. What might have been a potent strike force against the invasion was blunted in a short-sighted disaster that not only failed to take into account the lessons from the Blitz, but also from the ineffective Allied raids, which they had endured through the winter. Gruppe 1 of KG-66 did not escape Steinbach untouched, losing about half of their aircraft. However, as a specialised unit and one of the few users of the Ju-88S, they were soon brought back up to strength with fresh aircraft deliveries and given a new mission. The Luftwaffe's daylight forces had also declined since the futile offensive, as the American 8th and 15th Air Forces had decisively won the battle for air superiority over Western Europe. When the Allies landed in France, they did so under the protective canopy of their fighter forces, which the Luftwaffe could no longer contest. To strike at the American and British armies now deployed to France, one of the few options available was to attack at night. With the bomber force having been depleted, it would thus fall to what remained, with assistance from night fighter squadrons, to carry out attacks against the Allied beachhead, supply lines and frontline positions. In this, the Pathfinders of KG-66 were perhaps the best equipped squadron for the task, having superior navigational training and an excellent aircraft for the role. However, their operations were infrequent throughout the autumn of 1944, while they rebased several times to keep ahead of the advancing Allied armies. It was during the last month of 1944 that what resources the German forces in the West could muster were to be placed on an Operation Wacht am Rhein, an all-or-nothing offensive to stall the advance of the Western armies and deal a serious blow to their air forces on the continent. One of the major deciding factors for the operation was the need for poor weather to eliminate the Allied advantage in the air. For both sides, the only air units that could take part were those capable of instrument flying. For the Germans, this eliminated the use of all but their remaining bombers and their night fighters, which had become a second-line night ground attack force since the Normandy landings. The first Gruppe of KG-66 was to take a vital and early lead in the air operations during the offensive, where it would again act as a pathfinder force. Operations began on the night of December 17th and 18th, with the Luftwaffe mounting some 243 night attack sorties. KG-66's role was to aid in the navigation of night fighters, and to illuminate targets along the roads between Sittard, Maastricht and Liege. Given the already chaotic Allied supply situation, these strafing and cluster bomb attacks would sow greater confusion along the roads and hamper Allied supply efforts. Losses among the night fighters themselves were steep, as despite the minor presence of Allied night fighters, the use of proximity-fused shells among flak units would prove lethal. The attacks would continue throughout the offensive against rear-line supply convoys, trains and troop concentrations. Though they had some notable success, they were achieved at a very high cost to the night fighter force, and at a time when experienced air crews could not be replaced. KG-66 would fare somewhat better given their less direct role in the assault, and would be active with a strength of 29 Ju88s by January 10, 1945. For the next few weeks, what remained of the German bomber and night fighter forces of the Western Front would be used as night harassment forces. Morale plummeted as there was little hope of anything being achieved in these costly actions, and the best of the RAF's night fighter forces were again on the continent. During these night raids, crews felt a constant anxiety over the presence of the Mosquito night fighter, which possessed both incredible speed and an endurance that allowed it to pursue targets on long chases. When these planes were found to be operating in a certain region, night attack sorties for the night were often called off. Such notices came at a great relief to the dwindling number of bomber and night fighter crews who were called upon to support the retreat of the army, as it retreated ever deeper into Germany itself. In the final weeks of the war, KG-66 was merged with KG-200 and participated in night harassment sorties until the capitulation of the German armed forces. Over the course of its service, the Ju-88S would prove a tremendous improvement to Junkers' ever-versatile bomber. In terms of its sheer performance, Junkers was successful both in keeping their bomber from falling obsolescence, developing an airframe which was very successful both as a medium bomber and night fighter. However, nothing could prevent the eventual undoing of the Luftwaffe from both the British and American air forces, and the short-sighted decision-making that dominated the upper echelons of power in the Third Reich. This concludes our video on the Junkers Ju88S. What are your thoughts on this unique aircraft? Feel free to share your thoughts on this unique vehicle in the comments section. As always, we here at Plane Encyclopedia appreciate your love and support, so feel free to leave a like and subscribe to know exactly when new content rolls out. If you'd like to buy us some fuel to keep us going, visit us on Patreon or via PayPal. Until next time, stay tuned and keep following our updates.